Hello and welcome back to another episode of TACHES Teaches. I'm Tash, and in today's video I'd like to show you something really rather mind-blowing that you can do with next actions in the Bitwig Clip Launcher to help you generate arrangements quickly and in a fashion that would be really quite difficult to do manually just by chopping things up. So without further ado, let's jump right in and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. I've had a number of people reach out to me recently to ask if it's possible to do something similar to the technique I demonstrated in my recent Ableton tutorial on using the session view to generate arrangements out of samples. The answer is absolutely yes. Obviously we call the session view in Bitwig the clip launcher, so if at any point I call it the session view, blah 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 blah, you know what I mean. I'm referring to this view as opposed to the arrangement view. One thing I'd just like to say as well is that everything I'm going to be doing today is using samples. I'm going to be using pre-made pieces of audio created by other people, and I find that a lot of people have different opinions on this. Some people find it cheating, or some people struggle to take samples and make them their own. So bear with me and you'll see how it's actually a really quite fantastic way of taking things that other people have made and making them absolutely your own. And the way I'm going to demonstrate this is by taking, first and foremost, just say 4 top loops. And I'm just going to pick, say, these 4. I'm going to take those 4. Now, as I try and drag these in, I want to actually put these all on one layer. And obviously, you could go in and manually drag them and then drag this guy. But I'm not going to do that because that's a bit of a waste of time. In Ableton, it just automatically... Oh, come on. In Ableton, it automatically just puts them all on one layer. If you want to do that in Ableton, all you have to do is hold down the Control key. I'm not sure what it is on the PC, but I'm just press one of those other ones. Maybe it's the maybe it's also Control. Who knows? Anyways, if I were to just play this clip now, just press play. Actually, I don't like that loop. I'm just going to find 4 more. Let's put these on as well. Okay, so if I were to play this clip, it's just going to play through. Of course, I could play the next clip. Play this clip. But there's a feature down here which is the next action. In Ableton they call it follow actions, but in Bitwig it's the next action. And there's a variety of things we can do with this, but what I'd like to do is basically make it so that instead of playing any one of these clips, we're going to be playing all 4 of these clips and sequencing them in a fairly interesting way. I'm also just going to close up some of these views. Just give us a bit more real estate. So if I highlight all of these clips, I can now go down here and I can say turn on the next action section. Currently it's set to stop. So if I were to press play on one of these clips, as soon as we get to the end, it just stops. And it doesn't matter which clip I do that to. All of them are going to play until they get to the end, and that's one whole loop of the clip. So, you know, if this was a really long clip, I've just duplicated a bunch of times. I'm not actually going to do it. But it will play until the end of that clip. Instead of it stopping, I'd in fact like it to do something else. So first, let's just try play next. If I do that, you're going to see that once we get to the end of this clip, it's going to skip to the next. And you can see that it's flashing on the clip that's going to happen after that. There are a bunch of other options here, and play next is very cool if you want to create a sort of repetitive pattern. But we've also got things like play other or round robin. If I were to do play other, you'll see that we're going to skip that one now. We're going to play the third. Now we're going to do the second. Now we're going to go back to the first again. And you may be thinking, well, why is that useful? It doesn't actually sound great just jumping around playing, say, 1 bar of this clip, 2 bars of that, 2 bars of that. And what we can also do is, instead of saying play one whole time, we can actually turn off this multiple of clip length, and we can just put it to say a time-based value. If I drag this down to 0, if I were to press play, now nothing's going to happen. But if I drag now this third number up to say 1, this is going to be 1/16th note. And notice what happens now when I press play. With this on play other, we're just going to be playing 1/16th note, and then skipping to another one, playing a 16th note, skipping to another one. So let's check that out. That's already, I would say, far more interesting than what we had before. And of course, if I were to put this onto, say, play next, again, as I said before, we're going to have more of a repetitive pattern. And in fact, I need to not do play next, because play next, once it gets to the end, is going to stop. So instead, I'd like to do round robin. That's basically just going to keep cycling. So one thing that's important to note as well is whatever clip you start with is going to be... That's going to be the first note. So if I start on the second clip, I can create a slightly different pattern. Now, we are just triggering the first 16th note. So on every single one of these clips, we're only getting the first 16th note. There's an option here as well under play mode. Currently it's set to use project setting, and we can change that over here if we would like to go to the, where is it? Oh yeah, the settings under the project panel here. We can choose how we'd like them to play. So by default, maybe we want to say, okay, let's do legato from clip or start. I'm actually going to leave it over here because I want to do it manually, but if you do want to set it and forget it so that it behaves in one way for the entirety of the project file, you can. But I'm actually going to set these to not be use project setting, but I'm going to do legato from clip or start. What that's going to do is it's going to play the first 16th note of this, the second from this, third from here, fourth from here, fifth from here, and it's going to keep cycling through. So notice what happens now. We're going to be getting this rather interesting composite of the clips, and it means that we are actually going to be moving forward, and in that case, getting clap sounds. And I think this is a really interesting sound. And of course with this, it's going to make far more of a difference if we start it on a different clip. Because now we're getting this clap. And obviously the reason why it's behaving in this repetitive manner is because we have it on round robin. And we have only 4 clips. If I had a 5th clip in here, now it's going to make it a bit strange, and we'll look into using odd numbers later, but for now I just want to draw your attention to the fact whichever one you play first is going to create a different sound. I quite like this second one, so let's make sure we start again at the beginning. Actually, quite interesting. Now, I also really like to go in here, and I'm sure a lot of you know how much I enjoy making tight little drum loops. And by tight, I mean just short transients. And that's not to say that every sound in a project file has to be short, but when I'm creating these top loops, I do like for them to be quite tight and unintrusive. That just means that then if I were to add, say, a longer hat as a one-shot or a longer clap, that's going to gel a lot better. So I'm going to highlight all of these, and I want to edit every single one of these. And first, what I'd like to do is I'd like to chop them all at 16th notes. You could chop at onsets as well, but I like doing 16th notes. And by doing that, now I can, of course, bring the fade down. I'm going to bring this to infinity, and that means that I can fade them in tightly. So if I were to just play this single clip now, let's just get rid of those for a second. You can see that now we're playing far shorter notes. But I want to do this to all of them at the same time to save myself a huge amount of effort. The way that I can do that is highlight all of these clips and then go down here to layered editing mode. As soon as I click that, you can see that I now have the option to edit all 4 of these clips at once. I might actually also just duplicate this clip out, make it double the length, so we have a slightly longer setup here. Now, if I highlight every single one of these clips, Command A, I can now do whatever key command I have set up for slice in place, and I'm going to do chop to 16th notes. And one crucial thing I find is that when you do swing or groove mode in here, if the clips, if these events, they actually call it in Bitwig. A clip is, of course, this, and inside a clip can be many events. If these events touch, you're going to have some rather strange sort of like wibbly-wobbly overhang of notes, which I don't really like. And when I'm making these short, choppy things, I like to just grab these and halve them in length. You don't need to make it half, just so long as they don't touch. Now, all I have to do is do the fade on all of them. And if you drag up the bigger number, if you drag the smaller one, it will take longer. I just drag the biggest one, and that will take it to the minimum amount of fade that you can have. So if we now have a listen, all of these sounds are going to be far tighter, and it's going to be jumping through in the same way, but it's just going to feel a little bit more coherent to my ears. I think you'll agree that sounds rather cool. Of course, if I started on this one, it sounds different to starting on that. I like starting on this one. And if I want to make sure that it always starts like that, I could now just drag that one, the first one, to the bottom, and then we'll just bring this up. And if you wanted to, you could call it 1, 2, 3, and 4. So yeah, this is now our nice little top loop. I'm just going to take an EQ and roll off some of that low end. Just to make it nice and tight, we've now got a little top loop. So we'll call that top 1. Okay, cool. Maybe it would be nice to also just grab some sort of kick drum in here, and let's just put some sort of 4/4 situation in. I turned off my speaker so that when I brought the loops in earlier, they weren't just going to be blasting us. So I'm just going to put a 4/4 kick in here. You know me, I do love my house music. Let's just put that in there. I'm going to bring the velocity up. Going to bring the filter down a little bit. Maybe shorten it. Okay, cool. So now we've got our top loop and we've got our kick. I'm going to drag that to there. Let's just make these both red because it is, of course, drums. Nice. Why don't we find some sort of percussion loop? Now, I'm going to search for congas, and if I do congas, then I can ensure that it's loops. Now, I could find loops of all different types. Before, these top loops I put in, they all seem to be from the same pack, and I could do the same with the congas here, or I could find congas that are from a more diverse sample location. Of course, that's going to give us slightly different timbres, but for now I am just going to drag in a bunch, because I know that all of these have the same sort of sound to them. And again, we'll deviate later if we want to make it so that there is a bit of disparity between the timbre. But I'm just going to hold down Control, put these on their own clips, and you'll see that I've got 9 here. This is going to mean that we're not going to be getting a repeatable pattern, regardless of if these are all the same length, regardless of whether we've got this on play next or round robin, because of the fact that we're basically cycling polymetrically 9 clips. We're going to be having a slightly different sound come through. So let's just highlight these all, and we're going to put on, and we're going to put them onto next action, and we'll do, for this one, let's do play other. It's going to give us a completely random feel, and let's turn off the fixed length multiple clip loop. Let's bring this down, and we could try a 16th note, but let's actually try an 8th note. So that's going to be 2 16th notes. And if I don't change the mode here to clip or legato from clip, every single one of these is going to be starting at the beginning. And I don't necessarily always know whether that's going to sound better, so I always just check it out and see what would it sound like if we were just taking the first 8th note of these and randomly jumping around. Bring the volume down a little bit. That's quite interesting, but we are limiting ourselves to, say, just 9 options. So let's now try putting this to legato from clip. That's going to mean that we are scrubbing actually through time as well as jumping around in it. Let's check that out. Quite interesting. Let's try this instead of 8th notes to 16th. Let's see what that sounds like. Now in some of these cases, if they aren't fully on the grid, it can sound a bit weird. So you could, if you wanted to, go in and just tighten these up with the stretch mode. And that will just mean that as you're jumping around these 16th notes, you're not getting any strange notes coming through. It's going to be a bit of a hassle right now, so I don't particularly want to do that. So I'm just going to go back here and put this onto use project setting, which is in fact just trigger from start. We'll try that out because at least we know that every single one of these is definitely starting on a 16th note, and that should be okay for now. And if we wanted to, we could put a little bit of sidechain on there. That's quite cool. I like that. Now let's see if we can find... First, I just want to see what the key is of this song. I'm just going to take Polymer, just so I can patch, just play a note. I quite like D, sorry, this is E. Let's see if it's E minor. Okay, E minor it seems. So I'm not going to go into my samples again. I'm just going to search for E minor. And I want to try maybe start with like a guitar. So let's see what we've got here. That's quite a nice little sound. That's quite cool too. I'm going to take all of these. And of course some of these are actually just variations of the same clip, which can be quite interesting. I'm going to highlight these all, do the same thing, bring them in. And let's just put next action, we'll do round robin for now, because I want some sort of repeatable pattern. Let's just make sure that we can find one more as well. That will then give us something slightly more repeatable again. So I'm just going to change some of these so they're in a different order. Now we've got like a sort of thick, thin, thick, thin, thick, thin, thick, and thin. Whatever those words mean. I don't know if thick and thin is actually a musical term. But let's put this on to on and play round robin. And we're going to turn off the looping mode and maybe put this to, say, a quarter note. Let's see what that sounds like. We want to bring the volume down a little bit. Put a bit of side chain. And of course all of these are starting at the beginning, which as we've said can be very cool, but let's try out for the hell of it doing the legato from clip. Start it again. That's quite cool, creating the composite of all of those sounds. Put a bit of reverb. Maybe put some sort of EQ on there. Cool, let's see now about making a bass line of sorts. So I'm going to search for E mine bass, and let's find something. Let's go here. What's this? This is Chicago electric bass. So I'm going to take 4 of these. I want this to be quite simple. Let's highlight all of those. Same thing again, turn it on. Turn this to, say, let's do an 8th note, and we're going to do play round robin. Let's try it without changing it to clip legato. That may be a bit too, I mean, it could be interesting. It might be a bit boring. So let's change this to legato from clip, and we'll start again. Let's just trigger the whole scene to make sure that we're starting everything from the beginning. Quite cool. This could be fun to also then go in and edit those clips in layered editing, make them, let's do, say, 8th notes. We'll chop that in, and we're just going to shorten these all just a little bit. I believe we did 8th notes rather than 16th. Am I correct? Yeah, we did. So if we shorten all of these, add a little bit of fade to them all. Just go in here, click 1, Command A. Let's fade these in a bit. Super cool. Now you can also, if you want, let's make it so that they're not going round robin, and we'll do play other, and I'll show you why. That means that, say, we're still moving through in the same fashion, but if I want to, some of them don't actually have to be 8th notes. I could say take one of them, take another one here, and we'll do the same thing. I'm just going to go in here and chop at 8th notes, but instead of this being this behaving in the same manner of this playing other on 8th notes, I'm going to do play other, but I'm going to make this actually 16th note. So that means that sometimes we're going to be getting a fast trigger. Let's see what that sounds like. Maybe we can do this one as well, 16th note. Maybe you can also take one of them and pitch the notes up. So one of them is, maybe the fast ones could be up an octave. I want to actually try doing this all on 16ths, but you get the idea. You can really be quite wild with, let's just bring this all down and we'll do it, there we go. Let's go back to 8th notes. I'm just going to undo that and remove this. Put a bit more side chain on there. Let's find some shaker loops. So shakers, let's take these 4, and we're going to do the same thing. We'll just put these on, and this time I'd actually like to do them as just quite tight 16th notes. So highlight them all, slice in place, and maybe let's do onsets. So let's slice these at onsets. I'm going to hard quantize them. and just ever so slightly shorten them all. That's not shortening. Neither's that. There we go. So now they're all just going to be shortened a little bit. Some of these are actually longer cuts because the onsets picked them up as such, but that doesn't matter. That means we're just going to get some slightly more interesting rhythms. So let's just drag that up, shorten them all, and let's do for this, let's do round robin, and we'll set this to 16th notes. So just drag it all down, do 1/16. Let's try this out. And if I start on a different one, of course, this one would probably sound quite good to put onto legato from clip. In this case, it probably does make sense to change it over at the beginning. But let's try this out. We could maybe also fade in the beginning a little bit, make it a bit smoother. Not too much. This could probably do with a bit of volume dip and then side chain. I'm going to take some sort of top loop. Let's take that. We'll just have one thing that is sort of repeating on its own. Super cool. Why don't we see if we can add some sort of flute element? So I'm going to do flute E minor. Of course, you don't have to use the same key always. Also, I believe some of these clips are actually going to be different lengths, so let's check that out. That's not actually a problem, but what we could do is, let's make the length of this just 2 bars. So all of these clips are actually now just 2 bars long, regardless of its length. And I'm going to go in, and despite the fact that some of these have silence at the beginning, that's actually alright, because that means that if it does trigger with silence, we're going to be getting a little pause. So let's put again, next actions, we'll do play other for this case, because I want this to really feel quite generative. We'll do legato from clip, turn this off, and let's do, say, let's do an 8th note. Let's check this out, see what this sounds like. Put a bit of delay. Now a fun little trick as well, if you want to have a bit more silence involved, is, let's just make sure, yeah, we did put it on legato from clip. You can take a couple of others, and if you just bring the volume down so that they're silent, I'm just going to copy and paste these down. So we're going to have 3 options for silence. That again is just going to ensure that we get slightly more spacing in the phrasing. Let's put a bit of reverb as well after that delay. Make sure that we start from the beginning. I want a disco break as well. Let's see what we've got in here. Let's take, oh, that's perfect. I just want that little intro loop there. Let's copy and paste that. We'll make this into a 1-bar loop. I'm just going to go in and stretch all of these beats. Just make sure that they're bang on the money. And I'm just also just going to double this and take this little clip here, because I only want that open hat to happen at the end of every 2 bars maybe. So just copy and paste that back. Let's try this out. Probably roll off a little bit of that low end in the disco loop. Kind of bonkers, this. Okay, let's take vocal E minor and see if we can't find some sort of interesting sound. And of course you can pick. You can actually pick something that makes a little more sense. I like that. Oh, Lex, that's my name. That one could be interesting. Kind of interesting too. And again, vocals work really well to have a bit of silence.
Understand what they...
Let's take that one. I mean, some of these sound ridiculous on their own.
You got me for... I'm not really up for this.
Yeah, I'm feeling litty.
Let's see.
Maybe I don't understand why there is nothing left to.
Cool, we'll take that. And then maybe...
So why don't you leave?
This one too. Okay, so let's just try this. And I'm also going to copy and paste, just have a few silent ones. Just going to bring the volume down on those. Just make it down to infinity, basically. So it's next to silent. Of course, you can also go in and just delete the actual thing inside. That will ensure that it's absolutely silent. Let's just add 3 silent ones. And we're going to go in here and we're going to do... after... Let's do an 8th note. And we'll do play other, and we'll make it so that it's legato from clip start. Let's try this out exactly as is. Maybe we'll bring the volume down on them all. Probably bring the volume up a bit again. This one could be maybe better to do slightly longer than an 8th note. Let's do a quarter note. Let's try that out. Start from the beginning. And when you blend these in with things that actually are consistent. If you'd like to take your support a step further, then please consider becoming a member of TＡCHES Tribe, my music production and creative mindset community, where you'll gain access to all of the project files of the tutorial videos I make, as well as be able to attend some fascinating live streams and take part in some fun community challenges. But let's jump right back into the video. It's really cool because it sort of adds this layer of unpredictability underneath that can be very hard to achieve by coming up with these things manually. Give me something fucking simple. There we go. This will do. I'm going to bring that down. It's quite nice to have a continuous shaker. And now I'm going to find some sort of cool clap as well. Ooh, there we go. Sometimes you just find them right off the bat. Just drag that into here, and I'm going to delete the 1st and the 3rd kick drum. Bring these back a tiny bit, and then we'll do also a double clap here. I'm going to put that on every 4, so it only happens at the end. Maybe we'll also do this on the 1 of 4. Sounds really quite bonkers, but still. Let's get rid of some of these silent clips on the vocal. Rename these. Disco break. So shaker, shaker 2. And we've also got this top 1, and this is top 2 now. Let's just make all of those red, so that we know that they're drums. This is Congas, Congas. We'll put that in a group. Drums, very nice. And then this was our guitar. Maybe I also want some sort of keys. So let's search for key, E mine, no. Oh, these Chicago keys could be cool. Let's do the same thing. I believe we've got something else in here that's Chicago, but maybe the bass was. Let's do the same thing. We're going to highlight all of these guys, put it onto next action, and we'll do play other. So we get, let's do play next, and we'll make it so that it's actually just 4 clips. I'm going to take a guess and say that I would rather these 4 than have that. Highlight them all again, and let's do legato from clip start, play next, and we'll do it. Let's try 3 16th notes. Let's see what that sounds like. Making sure to always start from the beginning here. You could even just map that to a key. I'm going to map this to that key, the top left one below escape. Now when I press that, what would it sound like if we turn the guitar back to trigger from start? I also like mapping the Q key to turn the kick off. Let's put some sort of nice compression on these drums. I really like the NLS channel from Waves. Of course, we can bring in some of these other elements, maybe turn out the guitar. Bring in the keys again. Oh, these need to actually be round robin, because otherwise they just end. And now this may sound chaotic, which it absolutely does, but what's cool is you can now, of course, if we call this organ and vocals, we've already done that. This is flute and bass. I'm actually going to see if we can find something different for the bass. I like that. And this could actually be a perfect time to demonstrate another little technique that you can use in here. But as well, if I scroll down, see if we can't find something. What do these sound like? Okay, these are kind of more clubby. You'll notice as well that under the options here, there are things which are like play next, play round robin, but then you've got things in blocks. Now this is quite cool because if you leave a gap in between a group of clips and you say do things in a block, so round robin in a block, that's going to only take into account these clips until you trigger one of these guys. So if I do, say, random in block now, and I would go here and I'll do the same thing next, we'll do play random, or yeah, we'll do other in block. Actually, random in block is interesting because that means you might get the same clip. Other will always play another one. Random may, you know, there is a possibility, maybe a very small possibility, that it may stay on the same clip for 4 in a row, which can be kind of interesting. So let's do this, and again we'll do 8th notes for the bass, and we'll do trigger legato from clip, and let's try that out. So if I just press play on this group, I can now take the kick out, and as soon as I trigger this, really cool. We could also try reversing all of these flutes. Reversing can be cool. Maybe reverse some of them. So let's reverse one of these keys as well. Vocals back in. And of course, if I wanted to, I can now, let's just put this in a group. We'll call this bass, and we'll call this music, and we'll call this vocals. It probably doesn't make sense to do these as groups when you're actually bouncing them down. Probably makes far more sense to do them as individual channels. Let me just make sure that these are all satisfactory in coloring. Bass is of course going to be orange. Very nice. If I wanted to, I could now take a couple of audio files, and if I want to make it really simple, I could put it over here on my, if I want to keep it really separate, we can call this, say, bass. Let's call this one guitar. Keys, or organ actually, organ. Then we've got our flute, and then we've also got vocals. So I can take the input now from vocals, and I'm going to do vocals pre. And that just means I believe that it's going to be before the volume faders, and maybe even before the effects. Let's just check that out. No, I think it's actually just before the fader, so you're still going to get the effects. So if you want to, I would suggest actually putting the effects on the group if you want to just have those vocals recorded raw. But, you know, in this case, it might be a good idea to actually bake it in. So let's just now do flute. We're going to music, flute, pre, organ, music, organ, pre. We'll do the same with the guitar and the bass. Where are you? And we've got bass here, so bass, bass, pre. So if I record enable all of these now, and for the hell of it, let's also make just a couple more. We'll do one for congas and top. So we'll do drums, top 2, pre, and congas. Drums, congas, oh, congas, pre. Now this means that if I were to go in and just record a bunch of layers of this, I can now just... We can mute these if we don't want to hear them. Let's play a little bit of the other bass now. Stop the clip. Let's stop the vocal or do some sort of crazy delay. And we'll bring this bass in. And you know, if you were to use some of the techniques I showed you in some of the other videos of using group modulators, of course you could play these things live as you're recording in these stems. But now if I were to go into this view, I can actually just whip those in here and I could start arranging something. So now I've got all of those audio files, I could get rid of this clip and we could bring in all of the drums that aren't doing that funny generation stuff. So let's just pop those in there. Now we can close up this clip view and I could go in and I can actually start picking what I want. So let's get rid of vocals and flute and organ. Let's just do bass to begin with. Let's make sure we're playing the side chain as well. And there might be some gold in here, but maybe we don't even need it. Maybe we'll start that there. Maybe we'll make it so the kit comes out for a bit. Don't need the clap until here. Maybe we'll have a little bit of that top loop there. Add a little bit of this vocal in reverse. Let's just bounce that so that we can quickly move it in. I might just even do that coming into here. Let's try that out. Maybe we can do the organ. We'll just do a little bit of the stab. And I'm not going to go and spend too much time doing this right now, but if you were to go in and, you know, really chop some of these pieces up, I can guarantee you're not going to come up with these kind of chops manually. You are really going to have some rather wild options when you let the computer help you out like this. So let's try that again. We'll do the vocals and the organ. And of course, if you're doing, you know, some really crazy delays on here and stuff, let's try that. Let's do it with repitch. Maybe we want this bass to come in there actually. No, I prefer the other bass. Let's actually bring it in with the guitar. Make sure to turn off this feedback. Bring it in. Really cool. Maybe we do want that clap there. Let's loop it out. Put a little breakdown section here before we come back in with that bass again here. also now just hide these guys, just deactivate them, bring these back up here, and now I can organize them. But yeah, I think you'll agree that this is a really pretty great way of utilizing just stems or loops from your project, from your sample library, that otherwise you might never actually play with. You'll notice as well that the way that I was doing this, I wasn't even listening to these sounds. I was putting zero effort into choosing the source material that was then being generated by this technique. But if you were to, I don't know, you have a guitar, you could record a bunch of loops of you playing, and you could cycle through loops of yourself in these fairly interesting ways. Or say you've worked with a vocalist and you developed like a sort of sample pack bank of her singing or him singing, you could get some really cool results that I again really doubt that you would be able to do if you were just doing this manually. So I'm very excited to see what you guys come up with this. As always, the project file for this, if you want to just have a go with what I've created already here, will be available for TÄCHES Tribe members. You'll find the link for joining that in the description down below. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this technique. Well folks, that's sadly all we have time for today, but I do hope that this video was useful. If you enjoyed it, then please remember to like, comment and subscribe, and click that notifications bell if you'd like to keep up to date with all of my future videos too. In the meantime, happy Monday and happy creating.